The Sons of Liberty is a politically neutral organization. We believe that the Judeo-Christian ethic has provided the principles upon which this nation was founded. It is our belief that these principles provide not only the foundation and framework for American government and society, but are also essential to the maintenance of a fair and just society. All program content is based on a Christian biblical worldview.
One of you said to me recently that we shouldn't rock the boat. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that I am a boat rocker.
I will not wear the mask.
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 I will not wear a mask.
I will not get the vaccine.
I will not get the vaccine.
And I will not get the vaccine.
I will resist evil.
I will resist evil.
I will resist evil.
I will submit to God.
I will submit to God.
I will submit to God.
In the Lord I will praise His word. In God I have put my trust, and I will not be afraid.
Hear my prayer, O Lord, and let my cry come to you. Do not hide your face from me in the day.
For the Lord is the great God, and the great King above all.
Rise up, O judge of the earth, render punishment to the proud. Lord, how long will the wicked, triumph?
Righteousness and justice are the foundation of this world.
I hate the work of those who fall away.
With my mouth I will make known your faithfulness to all generations. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Your faithfulness you shall establish.
On an instrument of 10 strings, on the lute and on the harp, with harmonious sound. For you, O Lord, have made me glad through your works. I will triumph in the works of your hands.
Are on high forevermore. For behold, your enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. I will defy tyrants.
I will defy tyrants.
I will defy tyrants. I will defy tyrants.
I will defy tyrants.
And good morning, America. Welcome, Christian conservatives, constitutionalists, liberals, libertarians, communists, Islamists, LGBTQ, RSTV, WXYZ people, all the boat rockers around the house, and anybody else I may have missed to the Sons of Liberty radio show here on Red State Talk Radio, where we use the Bible and the Constitution, not to see who's on the right or the left, but who is on the straight and narrow. I'm your host, Tim Brown, coming to you live from the U.S.-occupied state of South Carolina, the editor at sonsoflibertymedia.com, and for our Muslim friends, I'm the infidel that Allah warned you about. I hold to the book, the Bible, as the authoritative word of God. Glad that you guys have joined us this morning. If you'd like to check us out online, please do so. sonsoflibertyradio.com and also sonsoflibertymedia.com. In fact, if you're listening by way of Red State Talk Radio and you want to watch the video portion of the radio show, that's right, you can see the face that's made for radio, head over to sonsoflibertymedia.com and you'll see two videos at the top of the page there. The one on the left is an educational video from Bradley. He was traveling yesterday, so that's what we got up there. And you'll be able to watch that until 3 o'clock this afternoon, in which case, I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be on the radio or if he's going to have another educational video up, but that'll change at 3, all right? On the right side is where we're streaming live. Just click on the play button right there. And when you do, blow it up on whatever device you got, and then click on the Rumble icon that's in the bottom right-hand corner. You can join us in the chat on Rumble. By the way, we are streaming to Rumble at Sons of Liberty Radio Live. We're also on beforeitsnews.com at the top of the page there. And we're also on DLive.tv at The Sons of Liberty. So you can check us out in all of those video outlets. But if anything ever fails, just go over to sonsoflibertymedia.com, top of the page there. Right up under there is where you can sign up for a newsletter. Please do that. And you get one email a day. That's in the evening time, usually, all the articles that we put out at sonsoflibertymedia.com. And then also, if you want our ministry email to know what's going on in the ministry for the week, go to sonsoflibertyradio.com and sign up right there on the front page, and you'll get that. That's once a week. That comes out on Saturday, so you'll get some exclusive content in that. Also, while you're there, if you agree with our message and you'd like to help us do what we do on the internet and the radio and out among the people in the 50 states, there's a donate button at the top of the page. Click on that and make a one-time donation, or you can partner with us monthly as a son or daughter of liberty. And we appreciate all you guys, because we can't do what we do without you guys supporting us. So we're very appreciative to everyone that does that. Also, our store is available. Lots of great conversation starters as well as equipping tools there. And this week we're highlighting Bradley's book, The Grass Doesn't Work, The Rocks Do. It's normally a donation of $11. This week only, you can get 25% off through Saturday at midnight when you use the promo code GRASS. Pretty simple. Use GRASS, you get 25% off. It's a really good book, so be sure to take advantage of that this week. Let me hit a couple of items from sonsoflibertymedia.com, and I got one video I want to show you, and then we're going to bring in our guest this morning. sonsoflibertymedia.com, some of the headlines we've got. This is latest from Bradley. Beware if those who are running for office are playing along party lines. They're not there to serve the people. They're there to serve the party. And I don't know what it's going to take for the quote-unquote conservatives, the constitutionalists, the Christians, in this country to get out of the party spirit. It was the very thing our forefathers warned us about. Washington warned us about it. And John Adams warned us about it. In fact, it's kind of interesting that when you talk to them about this, they'll say, well, we have to choose the lesser of two evils. Well, John Adams says the whole two-party system was a great evil. And where in Scripture are we told to ever choose the evil, even the lesser of it? Spurgeon was the one who says when you're confronted with the choice of the lesser of two evils, choose neither. We're to not be a part of that. All right? Also, sonsoflibertymedia.com. If you missed this yesterday, the great interview with G. Edward Griffin on the science and I use that as sort of the pseudoscience and politics of cancer that hinders cure. And I wish we really would have had 3 hours with Mr. Griffin because there was so much to unpack. We barely got into the political side of it, and we really didn't fully get into all of the stuff that was there on the real science, the real, what B17 and a lot of the foods that are grown, how they contain that and how they're good for our health, especially the Hunsakuts, whose average age before Western foods were introduced to any of them was like 160 years old. It's pretty incredible. It really is. But check that out at sonsoflibertymedia.com. Also, our nurse and nutritionist, Kate Shimarani, she started up when she put this video out about Freemasons and murder, and that's just the NHS, doctors and nurses fronting for the regime. You can hear that little 10-minute spiel, and I think she's really stirred it up with a lot of people. We were talking about that yesterday. You can check that out at sonsoflibertymedia.com. Also, the Mockingbird Media turns on the Bidens, or at least that's what they want you to think. Trusted name in news, the least trusted name in news, you know who that is, CNN, verifies Hunter's emails and probe close in on potential crimes. The things are pretty cut and dried as far as the crimes that have been committed. Latest from Chuck Baldwin, evangelical paganism. This obsession with the Antichrist state of Israel is just incredible. I mean, it really is. Check that out at sonsoflibertymedia.com. Also, neo-Nazi maniac who planned to shoot up a synagogue was given his guns by law enforcement. Right. Yep. They're always there, aren't they? Usually it's three-letter agencies that are behind them as well. Now, I've got one video I'm going to show you. There's plenty. And yesterday, if you didn't get in the archive, which you can find on the G. Edward Griffin article there, scroll down. The bonus videos are all down below that. I don't know. We got 12 or 15 of them. Just different things, so I'm not having to give everything out here on the air, and we can focus on what we're doing. But this is one that came out of Massachusetts, and this is concerning the whole climate change stuff. And they're given a guise for them to be able to justify weather modification. Take a listen.
Air Force is on record as saying, quote, they want to control the weather by 2025, and we are not talking about just seeding the clouds for rain. Of April this year, there are more than 150 different weather modification programs around the world. Since about 2000, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have been spraying the entire United States sky with the toxic brew of chemicals and other biologic agents. Military and some commercial jets have been fitted with huge barrels of at least 49 different kinds of documented chemical poisons. Among other documented ingredients in this toxic man-made clouds are pathogenic molds, fungi, weaponized viruses, and made in some places like the secret site at Fort Detrick, Maryland, of scholars and professors tracking this that have big questions about this.
Okay.
Barry?
All right, so I want to ask people of these sovereign United States, when did you authorize your government to spray you with chemicals? When? Is that somewhere in the Constitution that I missed? And they're doing it, and nobody is held accountable. And yet, some of the same Christians, conservatives, constitutionalists I spoke about at the beginning of the show are silent on this, but boy, they want to back the military. Did you hear it was the DOD doing it? They're participating in it. Do you see how they get you confused and wrapped up to where you'll support what they're doing and you don't even know you're supporting it? Oh my goodness. No wonder we're in trouble. I mean, the Lord promised confusion upon a people who are disobedient to him. And this is part of the issue. We think we're doing the right thing, and then over here, what we're supporting, they're still doing this over here. Same thing happens in the healthcare, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today with our guest, Dr. Dave Cartlin. And Dave was sent over to me by Kate Shimarani. I played his video the other week. And so it's my privilege to welcome to the Sons of Liberty, Dr. Dave Cartlin. Good morning.
Good morning, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to see you. And look, why don't we start out this way? Why don't we tell people just a little bit about yourself? Because the other week we played your video you put out. I think it was about 8 minutes long or so. And we're not going to play that because we got the real thing here this morning. So tell people a little bit about yourself and what you do over there in England.
Yeah, so I think you call it in America, family doctor. So I'm a sort of generalist that works in the community, screening for illness, and been doing that since 2014. I've been a doctor since 2008. But prior to that, I did a degree in biomedical sciences, which was heavily weighted towards immunology and virology, microbiology. And in between those two degrees, that I got first class honours in, I ended up doing a master's as well, and ended up being a published scientist. So got a bit of a few strings to my bow, essentially, that would hopefully leave me a couple of minutes with fellow colleagues on the subject of vaccines, COVID, pandemics, etc. But aside from that, I'm a family man. I'm a Christian, and interestingly, you referenced Romans 1 then, just as we led up to the interview. Just feels like that everyone seems to have this reprobate/insanity mind. I'm a family man. I've got 4 children, 2 of which are down here in Cornwall with me. And that's about it, really. So as part of what I do, it's representing my views on science and ethics, but also representing as a father and as a husband, other people's wives, husbands, children.
Okay. Now, in talking with Kate, I know there's some things that it's sort of enlightening to you now over the past couple of years with the whole COVID 1984. That's what I call it, because I think the whole thing is just a bunch of, well, I shouldn't say nonsense, but it is a ploy on the people. It is something that's being pushed on them in order that they can facilitate these shots that they're giving out. And that's what they're wanting to that's what they're really wanting to push. So you've seen a lot of these things. You've had the regular training that other doctors have, and we had Dr. Andrew Kaufman on. One of the things that he pointed out was, he says, we were indoctrinated in school. They give you so much information, you have to go home and study it, you can't ask questions because there's no time, you got to be able to regurgitate it for a test, and then you get out in the real world and you start doing it, you start doing what they say, and it's like, I'm not really seeing people get better. In fact, in many cases, they're getting worse, or you're just putting a Band-Aid on an open wound, and he said that's when I had to rethink that. Let me ask you, over the past couple of years, would you look back on your, what they call education, would you look back on that and say you were more indoctrinated than you were educated about how to help people be well? Or would you say, no, I had a good training in that, or what? What would you say about your training?
Absolutely, Tim, you're quite right. You are, I don't know if I'd say indoctrinated, but you're not really encouraged to pre-think, let's say, or critically think even. So, I mean, when you do the medical curriculum, it's all about learning algorithms and learning pathways and learning, guidance from above in terms of NICE guidance in the UK. So if you're managing something like blood pressure, you're taught to just follow, the lines down an algorithm. And that's what you do. And a lot of my free thinking stuff came really from my role as a scientist prior. And I've seen that, very transparently through conversations with fellow medics, where I've tried to reveal to them genuine safety concerns around the rollout. Or ethical concerns about what's going on. They're just literally don't seem to be able to think outside the box, and that's the vast majority, circa 99%. I mean, I bumped into the person who vaccinated me just by chance this week, and asked this person a few questions about, are you aware that this is a novel technology, that it's an mRNA-based gene therapy, and also mentioned the Pfizer documents, and the lights were on and no one was home, essentially, and this is repeated many, many times a day with colleagues where I try and enter a conversation based upon, my two soapboxes really have been pregnancy and children going for, they've shot themselves in the foot as far as I'm concerned, that the younger and younger age groups that they've gone for, that the evidence base for making that approach to that cohort is just not there. And they're making a rod for their own backs, and that's where people are starting to wake up in the community, at least, because people, particularly in the UK, are now voting with their feet. But yeah, going back to your original question, it's absolutely a training where you're designed to just follow the lead, and even me stepping away the last 12 months in my awakening, should I say, it feels uncomfortable. I'll go back into my old ways, as I call it, even this week when I've been doing locum work. You slip back into, everything, a pill for every ill, I call it, that every time you see somebody, you try to sort of force upon them a medicine rather than take that holistic approach to their care. And that's what you're trained to do ultimately, to be a holistic doctor. But very much, particularly how busy people are, you're forced into making quick decisions in short time frames to give them that pill for every ill. So
yeah,
it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, and talking with Kate yesterday, she said she had a conversation with you, and I think she's going to be doing this with a lot of doctors and nurses and some interviews she's going to do independently. And one of the questions she asked is, were you ever trained in nutrition? And I got to ask you, were you ever trained in nutrition? Because I'm pretty sure your answer was no, as most doctors and nurses are. Was that the case? Were you trained in any nutrition? Because nutrition is really, when we were talking about G. Edward Griffin yesterday and the issue of cancer, he said this is how you control the disease that people get, is through nutrition, through what they eat.
Well, I can count on, whether I missed the lecture or not on a particular day with a sick bug or something, I never had a single lecture on nutrition. I can tell you that in either degree, actually, even in the science degree. Even when you're talking about immunology and things, that's the crux. And that's the things I'm discovering now through self-directed learning, things about the gut biome, functional medicine, general basics around health rather than big pharma-led sponsored decisions to give that drug.
Okay, now in the UK with the CONVIDs, how did that impact? Let's go back to say early 2020. How did that impact somebody like you as a general practitioner and such? How did that impact you? Because, in your video, and you can lead up if you need time to just expand the whole 2.5 years, almost 3 years that we're going on. If you need time to do that, take that. But how did that impact you to the point where you came up and made this video saying they were going to kick you out for not wearing a mask? But yet, please explain to people why you ended up taking the shot too, because most people would say, well, if I'm going to give up on something, I'm going to give up on the mask. I'm not going to take that shot. What happened there?
Yeah, it's a long story, so it cut me off if I do waffle on. But the recent situation about the mask, that's still ongoing. I refused to wear a mask in a heat wave with a negative COVID test. I was asked to leave the building, and I think they shut the hospital in the end because I was the only doctor due to be working for the latter 3 hours. So talk about health and safety. However, going right back to the beginning, I wasn't working where I live now. I was working in the Midlands. And to cut a long story short, summarise, it was just a very quiet time. You go in, we're seeing the same videos as the general public of, people dropping dead in the Wuhan streets, Italian, people dropping down like statues. And, and you go into work and you're just waiting for the guidance to come from above, from policymakers, etc. And it never really came. I always remember that first year, there was never any sort of Zoom meeting, face-to-face meeting. It's just literally, right, this is the situation. There's this unknown pandemic, killer virus going around. This is what we know about it. And we were given very rudimentary ways of assessing patients. And it was a case of, I've talked about this in other interviews, essentially assessing somebody with flu-like symptoms, whether they were breathless or not. And if they were breathless, you do a very rudimentary, get them to count to 30 whilst having inhaled a deep breath. And if they got to the end of 30, jobs are good on. If not, then you'd consider sending them to hospital. At no point in that first year was any sort of guidance from perspective of, other than general managing the virus with, paracetamol, Lemsip, honey and lemon, etc. It was a case of, are you breathless or not? If you were breathless, you'd go in and be vented. and likely not come out, actually, was the main outcome. And it was just a very quiet time that first year. And really, I mean, my awakening came because a couple of reasons, really, to answer the first point about why did I take the shot. My best friend in the world passed away. And she passed away from what I was led to believe was COVID at the time. And it's all over the media about this young 30-year-old family woman who died of COVID. And she contacted me the day before she was admitted, and she looked terrible on the Zoom call. And I told her to go to hospital because she was blue around the lips, obviously. And anyway, she didn't do that until the small hours of the morning. Did take the vaccine in the end, did take the advice in the end, sorry. And she went into hospital. I got a call about 3 hours after she was admitted from a nurse saying, your friend's really, really poorly. She's asking to speak to you. This might be the last thing you ever say to her. So things have moved really, really quickly. So I kind of had to say my goodbyes to her at the small hours in the morning. And she was in ITU for a couple of weeks, and she was subject to some, and I'm going to say, manhandling. She had pneumothoraxes twice. She had, she was de-intubated twice because they were kind of tossing and turning patients on the front, on the back as part of the policies, drugged up to the hilts with things like midazolam and whatnot. And at the end of it, she died, and they said it was COVID. And so the next day I took the vaccine as a knee-jerk. My best friend passed away from COVID, as I was understood it at the time. And so I took jab number 1. And then jab number 2, the approach came a few months later from a previous employer. And it was a case of saying, your job's going to be on the line if you don't take this. And I just remember that, that doesn't sound right, that, we're being coerced and bullied. That's never been part of medical ethics to attach a secondary gain or a protection by taking a medical treatment. And at the time, we were seeing the vaccine clinics rolling out, and people were coming in to have their vaccines, not for their health, not to stop them from getting a killer bug that 1/3 of people didn't know they even had. But they were coming out of the vaccine room saying, I can travel now, or I can go back to school now, I can play with my friends now. And it just seemed ethically not right. And I was listening to some of the conversations around, when they were consenting people at the point of the needle going into the arm. And it was the most cursory consent, in inverted commas, that I've ever heard in my career. No mention of adverse reactions or events, how to report them. The needle was plunged into the arm quicker than they could to move on to the next person. And it was like a conveyor belt. And that was my first stance, really. And in this country, they were about to sack 100,000 doctors and nurses for refusing a medical treatment. And I could never get my head around that ethical stance of, bodily autonomy.
So, Dave, can I ask you something about your shot? Did they give you any informed consent?
Absolutely not. So the first one came, and I was like, I refused flatly to do a vaccine at all. But because they were short on numbers, I said, can you sort of man the doors? We got a lot of people coming in, so I was just pointing people in the direction. And at that point, I wasn't really that deep into researching it. So I kind of had 12 months of just going along with it, and 12 months of waking up to it, fully waking up to it. So essentially, I came to have the vaccine because there were spare shots at the end. They had 6 in a vial, and they said, look, do you want it? And they can't caught me on the hop, really, because it'd been about a week after my friend had passed away, less than a week, and I took it. So it's a knee-jerk reaction. And then the second one, though, it was just a concerted approach every single day. Do you want the vaccine? Do you want the vaccine? You're going to have it. There's a mandate come in. If you want your job, you're going to have it, Dave. So I resisted as long as I could. And then I took a selfish decision to take the second one. I mean, it knocked me about the first one. I was in bed for 3 days with a headache, and like electric shocks is the only way I can describe it in my head. And then took the second one because I thought my livelihood was going to be at risk. And then they came knocking again 8 weeks later. You need a third one. And at that point, that's when it really, this is taking the mickey now. What are we doing here? Are these things working if you have to have 3 of them in quick succession? And so, I mean, that was a sort of pinnacle moment then. And so I was challenged then I challenged the doctor who approached me to take that third jab to prove the requirement and why I needed 3 from a scientific perspective. Never got a response, but actually I then went and set about an audit of patients that were having positive COVID tests back in October 2021. And pretty much 95% of them were triple jabbed, even back then. 1 person out of the cohort was double jabbed and 1 was single jabbed, and not a single one of the 150 were unvaccinated. So I was kind of asking my colleagues, what's your explanation for that? And I got some very unscientific responses, like the unvaccinated just can't be bothered to get tested. They don't care about the health. So I went back to the original data to look at the negative tests, and 70% of the negative tests were in the unvaccinated. I hadn't had a single one. So really early on, it was just a case of, we're being told on the TV, even by Fauci, Dr. Gates and the like, that, it stops you from catching the spreading, it will end the pandemic. And then I was seeing evidence directly in the clinic room of people who were positive were almost every single one of them treble jabbed. And obviously that's continued now into the quadruple jabbed, and across the countries of the world, we're seeing the most jabbed people, the most totalitarian measures that have been instituted are the ones that are still talking about COVID and still got the high figures and still got the high morbidity and mortality associated with COVID. Why are we still talking about it if these measures work?
Now, Kate has said, and I correct me if I'm wrong, you've done the test with the magnet too. Are you having that issue where you can sense the magnetism?
I faced a lot of ridicule for it, but it is a fact that stands up. I've got a magnetic arm, and that's all I really want to say about it. I know that a lot of people are looking at this as a separate issue. When I say I face ridicule, Tim, I mean I face ridicule.
Sure.
I went around all of my neighbours and stuck magnets on. I had a doctor contact me from the Midlands, very distraught because he's had a conspiracy theorist who told him to stick a magnet on his arm. Lo and behold, it stuck to his and his wife's arm. He then went to a GP surgery that he worked at and stuck it on all of his members of staff's arm. And then he gave me a kind of distraught phone call on one Sunday afternoon and said, you need to stick a magnet. I didn't have a magnet at the time, so I ordered some off Amazon, and lo and behold, stuck it to my arm. Called my friend around. Can you do this? Can you do it to me, just so I'm not sort of forcing it onto my skin? It's not sticking with sweat or anything. So we put some talc on there, and it stuck to me. It stuck to him, and it stuck to every one of my neighbours, most of my football team. And I've stopped doing it now because I put something on Twitter back in my early Twitter days, asking for advice. What is it? And then suddenly you're descended upon by the trolls that you're some sort of maniac. But I know other groups are taking this on in terms of it's a well-known phenomenon that's being kind of ridiculed, but it's very real. I've had people contact me recently who are messaging me. I mean, I've been banned on all the social media now just recently for spreading misinformation, but which is most definitely isn't misinformation. But the Big Four have suspended me indefinitely. And the outreach to these people's now ended because of that. But people were sticking magnets on the forehead, the noses, staples dangling off their earlobes. I can't explain that. I don't want to get involved too much into trying to either. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a magnetics expert, but I've got the very real, anyone can. In fact, my bosses at the time didn't believe me. They came around and stuck the magnet on my arm and went very quiet and then walked out.
Yeah. Well, they're confronted with things that are not in the narrative, and at least in your case, you've evaluated what you've been taught, what you were doing, what you're being told to do, and then you're saying, well, wait a minute, all of this stuff is different. That's what I want people to come away with. Is you're a guy who, you're taught these certain things, you're instructed to do these things the way you're doing them. Now you're realizing, wait a minute, they pulled the wool over my eyes on this, but I'm pulling it off, and I'm going to expose what's going on. By the way, I have some good news for people out there. Now, just so people know, this is information. I'm not giving medical advice. You want that, go to a doctor, okay? But because I've said all along, I'm not a doctor, don't play one on TV, and I didn't spend a night in Holiday Inn Express. But this book, MMS Health Recovery Guidebook, Jim Humble. We had Mark Grennan on the other week. By the way, just an update. Mark was extradited to the U.S. to be with his sons in Miami about 3 a.m. on, I think it was Thursday morning. It might have been Wednesday morning. So I have no more contact with him. Here's a guy who had free reign to call into the radio show, do interviews, send out all kinds of stuff on Telegram in a Colombian jail in which Americans paid $250,000 to arrest him and his sons for nothing more than preaching the gospel and providing good health to people through chlorine dioxide. Mark told us that they have a arm patch deal with chlorine dioxide and DMSO for people who have regular vaccines, the old style vaccines, that will basically eliminate them from your body. On the mRNA shots, he recommends going through the Protocol 1000, which is this. It's very simple. 3 drops of chlorine dioxide to 4 ounces of water 8 times a day for 3 weeks. He says, this is what he says, it will break down the spike proteins, it will break down the graphene, it will even break down glyphosate. So that may be something you want to look into. It's just information. I'm not telling anybody to go do it. I use chlorine dioxide every day with my family. When I start to feel bad, which is on a rare occasion that I do now, I'll use the chlorine dioxide a little stronger than what I do in the normal drinking water we have. But that's something you might want to look into, Dr. Cartland. But let's go back to what was going on. Okay, so we've got an idea of what was going on with you. What's still going on within the UK health system? Because I'm assuming you're part of NHS there too, right?
Yeah, I mean, originally I did resign because of it all. All I tried to do, in all honesty, Tim, was just voice my concerns. A genuine doctor with a history of science and a published scientist. I understand immunology a bit better than the average MBCHB graduate, which is the medical degree here, and just to try and raise those concerns about, the positive tests were in the treble vaccinated cohort. And at that point, that I was starting to see the few things unusual around vaccine injuries, direct vaccine injuries, and to get my colleagues, even this week, I've tried to, present to them cases. I do get people who contact me that have been severely disabled and vaccine injured within a very close proximity of having the vaccine. Yet my colleagues, and again, I would say 99% of them will not attribute to causality, even if, somebody's arms dropped off the day after the vaccine. It seems to be utter blasphemy to even consider that that's on the list of differential diagnoses. So it's this massive denial to even be able to speak. I mentioned earlier that I've been censored on all the 4 big social media platforms for misinformation. But my defense of that is I reference everything that I say, and I reference everything that I do and everything I post. I've been banned from LinkedIn, which is a sort of professional network, and I'm holding up the government documents on screen and reading them off ad verbatim. And that it's from the MHRA, or it's from these Pfizer documents, or the Pfizer trials, or Moderna trials, and you get done for misinformation. I'm sending this stuff to all of my colleagues at the moment in hospitals or doctors. They read it in terms of, you can see they've read the message, and there's no engagement whatsoever to be able to have that conversation. People are just completely blind. People talk about this sort of mass formation psychosis. It has to be something like that, because people are literally not able to interpret a black and white, data set, which is very clear, that a child could interpret. In fact, my nephew's just been recently staying with me. I've showed him some of the graphs that my colleagues won't talk to me about or comment on. They're very clear around the sort of high mortality levels in patients that have been treble or quadruple jabbed, and he picked it straight off the bat, and he's only 11. Not 11, sorry, 17. I don't know why I said 11. But he got it straight away. And this is the thing, we can't have these conversations. And all I've asked for in all of this from my colleagues is to debate me, to rebut me. Science at the end of it is about debate and hypothesis testing. And, if Dave Cartman's got this wrong, then please show me why and how and what methods I've misinterpreted. Have I misinterpreted the data? Absolutely happy to be wrong on this, but it's my absolute professional duty to follow my Hippocratic oath, to put the patient at the centre of all that I do. But unfortunately, that sort of level of integrity isn't matched by my colleagues. We're talking about vaccinating children here. If that's not going to pull your heartstrings, we're talking about, things like myocarditis in children or teenagers, or pregnancy. You can't get a pregnant lady in this country to go to the pound shop to buy a tube of Anusol. I tried to send her to get some Anusol, a real patient, and the pharmacist wouldn't give it to her because he needed a script because of the lack of safety data. But the self-same pharmacist was vaccinating pregnant women, in various trimesters with this drug. It just doesn't correlate, how can they, it's such double standards and such contradiction in what they're doing. So yeah, in this country, we're still deep into this kind of trance, I'd say, psychosis. I don't know how to explain it, but we're still doing, like I say, my current situation is I was working in a hospital and they came, tapped me on the shoulder and said, you need to wear a mask. It was a heat wave a couple of weeks ago. And I just said, look, they make me feel unwell, irritable. I did it last summer. I went along with it. I'm not wearing it today. You wouldn't make a dog wear a mask in this weather. And she just said, look, you need to wear it. It's government policy. So I said, okay, can you tell me what that policy is? Can you show it to me? And can you give me the evidence for it? Because I know damn well masks, don't work. Yep. So we show the adverse outcomes from cohorts that have worn masks throughout the whole pandemic. They've got the highest figures. There's other contributing factors to that. But they just kept repeating government policy. And I've had it all week when I've tried to argue my case. They marched me off the premises essentially, and I've not been able to work since. A fully able-bodied doctor with all the credentials I've got, able to crack through patients swiftly in the middle of a critical incident. Actually, we're in a critical incident because all the doctors are off with COVID. They're all treble jabbed, and so I'm not allowed to work yet at the moment until I get assessed to be safe to practice without a mask on in the hospital that I work in.
Yeah, Dave.
So that's just an example of the nonsense. And I've got a negative test as well. Each day I go into practice, I've got a negative test, to which my colleagues just say it might be a false negative. So why are we doing that 3 times a week if when it is negative, you don't believe that it's negative? They blow holes in their own logic or flawed logic, don't they?
Yeah, and people can see. I'll have a video up. It was up yesterday in the archive, but I'll put it up again today. Kerry Mullis, the guy who developed these PCR tests, said they were never to be used for diagnosis. That was not the point of them. And interesting enough, he dies about 2 months, 3 months before the whole pandemic starts out. And I think that I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Well, there's a hell of a lot of coincidences these days, aren't there?
Yeah, that's what it seems like, but we know that's not what it is. This is stuff that's planned.
These pre-pandemic kind of exercises that people are doing, it's so blatant, isn't it? You saw it with the Event 201, that they're talking about, lo and behold, a coronavirus, a zoonotic disease spreads the world, a matter of weeks before COVID was even uttered by anyone. And then lo and behold, the latest one, a tabletop exercise in Europe, was about, you couldn't write it, monkeypox. Somebody's having a premonition or something's being planned here.
Yeah. There is, but I think there's a silver lining for you in the midst of it, like there is for so many people, and we've talked about that on the show, is that some people, when I was a kid, look, I'm 53, my parents took me, I can still remember, I used to hate getting shots. As a little kid, you get the vaccines. I don't know how many of them they gave us then, 6 or 7, whatever the case may be. None of them are tested together. Now I'm finding that out at 53 or 52 at the time, 51, whatever it was when I learned that. None of them have been tested to see how they work together in the body. That was one. They're all bad for you. None of them have been proven safe or effective. And then, around 12, you get what they call the booster, right? So you shouldn't need anything the rest of your life. That's what they tell you. But we got a question here, Dave, and it's, they've come out with this thing called SADS, Sudden Adult Death Syndrome. And of course, you guys have the Mockingbird media over there, just like we do over here. And they're talking about, a heat wave's coming and there's going to be all kinds of, heart attacks and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to lead you in the question. I just want to ask you what your thoughts on there, and then I'll tell you what I think about it after. But what do you make out of SADS, and what do you make out of this reporting about heat coming on, and then people all of a sudden having massive heart attacks and dying and stuff like that in the media? What do you make out of that?
We've had a really concerted effort from our mainstream media and tabloids, really. It's been everything from, if you overzealously make your bed or the alarm clock set too loud, or football referees, if they blow their whistle too quickly, from the heat as well, and everything, really. It's been an absolute propaganda fest, really, about all these things that will cause an adult to suddenly die. And obviously there's that kind of message to kind of normalise it, really, and to pre-warn. But I've seen it myself. People after their I don't think it's sudden adult death syndrome whatsoever. I can't say for certain, because the issue here is that ability to, even if somebody drops down dead within a minute after their vaccine, how do you say for 100% with beyond all reasonable doubt? You can say it's a good probability if someone's had the vaccine and 3 minutes later they're fit in and they've swallowed the tongue and they choke and die. And there's it's a probability balance there that says it is. But I'm seeing now that the leading cause of death, I think it was yesterday, that Alberta, was it, in Canada, have said that actually from the bottom of the pile, race to the top in the last few months, is that the leading cause of adult death is an unknown cause of death.
Yep.
And I know in this country, they're not doing the sort of due diligence on people who die as they used to. I used to do a lot of work with undertakers where somebody died and they had a Part 2 doctor, it's called. So the doctor would then quiz the doctor who verified the death, certified the death, and have a bit of a chat about, does it seem a reasonable cause of death given the circumstances, to prevent situations. I don't know if you're aware of Harold Shipman over there, but, Harold Shipman was a family doctor that killed a lot of patients, let's say. And so that was set about as a safety net for due diligence. But now, people are being verified death, Part 2's gone, and they're cremated before you know it. And so that evidence trail goes immediately in terms of any sort of forensics that you may do or any speculation. I know a lot of the funeral directors in this country are pulling out these bizarre plots from people and very public about it, and seeing younger and younger cohorts of people coming into the fridges of the undertakers, younger and younger. It's unprecedented. They're ordering caskets at smaller and smaller sizes. They're unprecedented. So sudden adult death syndrome doesn't wash you away, I'm afraid. You need to be able, you can verify what a death is with a post-mortem in most cases, and that needs to be done. But most things that we stopped pre-COVID haven't been reinstituted. Same in things like, I know there's confounding factors, because in this country, GPs are still doing telephone consultations. We haven't got back to how we were seen. Part of my job is to take a history from a person, but then, get hands-on with them, listen to their chest, look in their throat, feel their abdomen, do a neurological assessment. We're not doing that. So again, in the mix of sudden adult death, you're missing so much pathology in the community. So GPs really need to snap out of this COVID fear and start seeing the patients again and do what they're paid to do. So yes, adult death doesn't wash with me.
It's interesting to me because, I've been one who's read 1984, Brave New World, some of those kind of dystopian kind of novels. And it's really interesting because, you have this thing of the memory hole. And so you have something that's put out and then it goes in the memory hole and then they put something out that's completely opposite. We were playing Dr. Fauci the other day saying here in 2022, I never recommended any lockdowns. And we played him from October 2020 saying, I recommended the president to shut the country down. That's one of those memory hole things. But the problem is they left the internet on, and the internet never forgets. People download stuff now because they know it's getting scrubbed, and they put it up there. And I agree with you. I think the SADS thing, I think the heat thing, and all this other stuff, and referees blowing a whistle. I think it's a cover for the shots. That's exactly what it is.
Well, there was a really good guy. There was a guy who spoke out yesterday. He's been speaking out a lot. A guy called Professor Enos from up north in the UK. And he's a very decorated, very qualified guy. And he was speaking out in the media yesterday about, after the second shot was given, you can park COVID mortality for a second and look at this all-cause mortality. So more and more people are dying at younger and younger age. That's a phenomenon being observed across the whole world at the moment. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he looked at the sort of correlation between when that second vaccine was given and then the weeks afterwards, there was a kind of in reverse order of age, an increase in all non-COVID mortality, which would have been coincident with, the rollout because they went for the older people first and then went backwards retrospectively through the age cohorts. And so at that point, at the end of the second, we observed this increase in all-cause mortality. And then the government gave us a bit of a gift, really, in that they repeated the experiment because at that point in time, there was confounders. It could have been what I mentioned before. GPs aren't seeing people, and there's a delay in cancer treatments and diagnosis and etc. So there's confounders in that. Why are people dying at a higher rate? But the government then repeated it by going, hell for leather for the boosters, and the phenomenon was repeated again. So there was the vaccine given, number 3, and then there was a short delay, and then in reverse age order from elders down to younger cohorts, the exact same phenomenon following the same trajectory of all-cause non-COVID mortality. And so for me, that's kind of like case closed, really.
Yeah, you were making mention, and I was just going to look it up this morning to see, because you talked about the large number of unknown deaths. I found that unusual too, and for the past probably year and a half, when I go on to set up things for the radio show, I'll open up the news page, which happens to be on this browser. I have to use different browsers because I'm logged into different things with them. But this one happens to be the Microsoft Edge, which I don't really care for, but I only use it for one or two things. And I'll open up their news page, and it's like every other day, somebody they're referencing died, but they don't have a cause of death. And most of them are 40 or under, or maybe they're in their 40s and under. And I've never seen anything like it. And these are most of them are what we call celebrities. So they're a small group of people. They're not like the general population. They're popular people for whatever reason. And these people are dying and unknown, seem to have no health problems and this, that, and the other. And the first thing I think of, Dave, is did they get the shot? That's just a natural thing that I think of.
There's a mystery, isn't there? There's that mystery. You don't get an answer. There's no mention in the media that they had the vaccine the week before, 2 weeks before.
And you have to go look it up.
I mean, as an of itself, that statistic is. I keep saying everyone knows somebody that's had some sort of serious consequence, whether it's a neighbour, friend, or somebody that just didn't wake up after their night's sleep. Husbands and wives just lying in state next to them, waking up to find your spouse dead. And that's celebrities, and that's in the real world as well. And there was that hospital I think it was the USA, wasn't it, where four doctors died within a week.
It was 3 doctors within 4 days.
And there's another one yesterday from I think a similar or very local to that hospital that died as well. A young fit female doctor as well. There's a 4th one. I found that yesterday. I don't know if it's in the same hospital. Again, I mean, and you get clusters even in the UK, where we had one in Ireland where a lot of people that play a sport called GAA, which is 4 young men died within a week of each other. And they're young, fit, healthy athletes. People dropping. I watch a lot of football, soccer, I think you call it, isn't it? Soccer, and people dropping on the football pitch. Now, I've been alive for 40 years, and I can remember the exact names and the exact place I was when I saw somebody like Fabrice Muamba collapse and nearly die on the pitch. Was resuscitated. Mark Vivian Ferre these are people that you remember, and suddenly, you're watching Sky Sports and watching a game. And then I remember one particular Sunday, there were 3 matches all at the same time, stopped for a medical emergency, either in the crowd or on the pitch. It's happening in athletics and tennis. And yet no one wants to say the sort of the blasphemous connection between that and the COVID vaccine. And, we know most of these people have had to have the vaccine to be able to continue in their professional pursuits or to be able to travel as part of their professional contracts. So, you can pretty much assume that they are vaccinated. I mean, the famous case like Novak Djokovic, he's been very public about it. And, he's faced backlash for his brave stance, really. And lo and behold, he wins Wimbledon. He's a good tennis player, but everyone else was, weren't looking very healthy during that tournament.
Sure. Yeah, you've used the term blasphemous a couple of times, and I want to kind of hit on that. It seems to me that what is passing for modern medicine is nothing more than a religion that's been set up. We made mention of Revelation 18:23, by thy sorceries or their pharmakia were all the nations deceived. And it's interesting to me also that the Lord Jesus had the writer Dr. Luke write Luke and Acts, and he was a doctor, and he was also a very good journalist. He went around it because he wasn't an eyewitness. He went to the eyewitnesses and asked them about what was going on, and he was there to evaluate, even with the Apostle Paul, the healings that took place too. Here's a guy who's trained in the medicine of the day, and he's able to go and verify these are real healings, and they're coming supernaturally. They're not coming from, whatever we're recommending as doctors at the time. So he's one who does that. But this has been set up as though it is a religion. You've got the high priest like Fauci and somebody who's not a doctor, Bill Gates, and you've got other people who are pushing this on, the pimps for big pharma in our corrupt government, who are pushing that stuff, and the indoctrination of the other guys who are going to administer things like this to people. You've got all that going on, so it does have a religious overtone to it. It is a religion, as it were. And the question I want to ask you is this: as you look at things what you've experienced in the past couple of years, and especially here recently, do you believe that people above you know exactly what's going on? They know there's a genocide that's going on. And would you agree with me it's a genocide? You can answer that separately, but would you agree it's a genocide? And do they know it's going on and they don't care because the money's too good or too much pressure on them?
It's multifactorial. I mean, genocide's a strong word, but I guess if you define genocide, it fits that definition quite well. I mean, what I would say, and remembering that I'm a practicing doctor, I've got to be careful that there's a lot of people dying in a close proximity to the vaccine, and there's nothing that I've seen personally that was convinced me that there isn't a causal link, and there's certainly not anything that's definitively proven me that there isn't, that it isn't, for example. And the burden of proof is on the person who is verifying the death or doing the post-mortem to say this is what caused the death ultimately. So, yeah, I mean, people are dropping like flies essentially. So, what's behind that? We can but speculate at the moment. But yeah, people are following orders blindly, as we talked earlier about the training that they've had to not think outside of the box. I wouldn't think it's something people say, is it the money? That people aren't getting rich from giving these vaccines. They just get £15. I don't know what that is in dollars per jab. So it's kind of wiped out each of the surgery's debts, but they're not getting rich, on it. I don't think it's the money. Mass formation psychosis. Yeah, these people, I gave an interview in the UK this week where I called out these doctors that kind of tapping me on the shoulder privately saying, look, I've seen this, I've seen that, but I can't report it. I've got a mortgage, or, I've got kids and a wife to pay for, etc. So you're really brave at what you're doing, but I know the GMC have come after you, but I really can't. I'm not in a position to go down that alley, but really admire what you're doing. So there's that whole doctors have gotten used to the life, rather than doing their career for the oath and for that vocational, when they grew up as a child, they wanted to be a doctor. It's actually a career that offers you a lot of secondary things like a big house and nice cars and a good lifestyle. So, and these people have been vaccinated. Remember, not only have they took this treatment themselves, so, they've been duped. And it's human nature, isn't it, to not want to admit you're wrong?
Yeah.
Not many people want to do that. But imagine if you, firstly, didn't actually consent to the treatment that you took 3 times yourself, but you're now finding, and people must be seeing that it doesn't work, that they're onto their 3rd COVID stint after their 3rd jab or 2nd. And, all these doctors off work in the UK at the moment and nurses can't staff the departments because they're all off with COVID. And the death figures, all very high in the 3rd jabbed or 4th jabbed cohort. This stuff is black and white. And then they've gone ahead and proceeded to follow government diktat and say, it's safe and effective. It's safe and effective. You need to give it to pregnant women. You need to give it to children. And they've gone along with this without questioning. There is no ability to question these guys. I mean, very simple, I keep challenging people when they go for their vaccines, if they're keen to have it, just ask the vaccinator, firstly, what's in the vaccine, see if they can give you a sort of a good answer to that question. What are the actual ingredients here? And secondly, say, you tell me that this is a safe and effective treatment. Can we break this down into two parts? Can you explain to me, A, how it's safe, and B, how it's effective? And please, can you give me a reference? Just a single reference. I mean, if it's safe and effective, it shouldn't be that difficult to give me one citation of a cohort study that shows, all of the benefits that we see in this country anyway, modelling studies that show. I mean, the recent one that's being debunked is that the COVID vaccine has saved 20 million lives. Based on what? On modelling, and we already know that the modelling of the original part of the COVID figures at the beginning by Imperial College was completely flawed, and they threw that in the dustbin. So why are we using modelling to kind of work out how good the vaccine was? People are seeing these things with their own eyes, and I've noticed, Stephen, just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, a glut of doctors having a bit of an awakening. It's difficult when I'm shut down on social media to now connect to these people, but I've had taps on the shoulders, phone calls. I was giving your number, I've seen some of your interviews. Amazing what you've done, but I've been vaccinating children. What the hell have I been doing? Having like eureka moments and epiphany of guilt. And we've seen a few. I mean, how do they respond to that? They can either resign and skulk up into the shadows or take early retirement. I mean, there's been a few doctors commit suicide. Just this week, there's two doctors that committed suicide in Ireland. So I don't know how, there's going to be a eureka moment. There's going to be that moment of truth where people realise what exactly they've been involved in. And actually, in that, they're obviously got to critique their own opinions and thoughts through this. Because, I've completely blinded people with basics like mRNA. Did you know that this was an mRNA that you were giving to people? What's mRNA? And these are doctors. Or have you read the Pfizer documents? Those documents that Pfizer tried to hide away for 75 years. No, what's Pfizer documents? Well, you vaccinated me with the Pfizer jab. I mean, I met my vaccinator this week and she didn't know what the Pfizer documents were, yet vaccinated me with Pfizer. So yeah. It blows your mind. It does feel like that Romans 1 reprobate mind. My testimony to become a Christian in very shorthand was that I looked at prophecy in the Bible, in the scriptures, as an atheist. I was an atheist up until 5 years ago. And I looked at prophetic fulfillment. And I mean, yourself, not many prophecies are left to be fulfilled other than the Lord's second coming, but there's a few left over. And you look at Romans 1, you look at 2 Timothy 3, we're looking at those generations now. It's playing out, tick, tick, tick on the prophecy list.
Yeah, I see the biggest prophecy fulfillment is that of Christ, and he encompasses so many prophecies that came hundreds of thousands a year before he stepped on the scene, which should be convincing to people, but people want to make it out and say, oh, it's an ancient book and this, that, and the other, which leads us to what I want to promote here, and that is there's real hope for people, but only if they hide themselves in Christ. Listen to what the scripture says. Psalm 91, this is one that I've touted all through this. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the what? The noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness. Remember that when they wanted to put everybody in before 10 o'clock because, if you're out after that, if you're out before then or whatever, the convids can get you, but after that it's okay because he doesn't know where to find you because it's after 10 o'clock. Nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor by the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. You know what? If people could understand that, Dave, if they could understand the power of God, if they just trusted Him, if they really trusted Him, that 10,000 may fall around us from this shot, from any of the other stuff they want to put out on us, if they could understand that and trust in the Lord and hide in Him, that they would be protected, boy, we would see an uprising against this false religion of pharmakia like you wouldn't believe. Hang on and I'll say goodbye to you off air. Guys, catch Bradley at 3, hopefully, sonsoflibertymedia.com. And in the morning, we'll be back with Kate Shimrani, 8 a.m., and Mark Steele's going to be joining us. We're going to bring this thing. You guys have been asking about the 5G and the rollout and things of that nature going on there. So hang on. We'll have it at 8 a.m. tomorrow. See ya.